4 days I have to talk about, which nobody really cares about now. But
The day
actually,
democracy almost died.
that's right, because unarmed people, one of whom was in a Wookiee outfit, was going to bring the entire U.S. government to its knees, and
Without guns.
yeah, without guns, and with an engraved invitation from the Capitol Police to walk in. So,
Unlocked doors.
unlocked doors, and
It broke in through an unlocked door.
and of course they managed to put this revolt down, this insurrection they call it, down by shooting an unarmed Air Force veteran who was standing in front of a glass door that she was never going to get through unless she could transform herself into Ant-Man. So,
Yeah.
but apparently, who knows?
Hey, did they ever find Nancy Pelosi's laptop?
I don't know. I mean, that's a great question. I'm sure. It's, you know where it probably is. It's probably at the Penn Biden Center, actually, where many things have been kept for a number of years. I knew I'd make you laugh at that one. No, we're hot on the trail of that story. I got to watch some coverage of that this morning. So, folks, here's the news. Apparently, President Brandon has been hiding top secret documents, including stuff that would compromise sources in sensitive intelligence operations in Iran, Ukraine, and some other places. He's just been keeping that at a place called the Penn Biden Center, which is at the University of Pennsylvania. It's a center for foreign policy excellence that was founded apparently with tens of millions of dollars donated by the Chinese Communist Party, and I don't know why they don't why don't they finally rename it the Penn Biden Xi Center? They could do that, and it would just be like a dash and then two more letters, and they'd have it all. But they discovered, apparently just randomly, on November 2nd. Keep that date in mind. On November 2nd, they discovered this minor trove of top secret documents that had been taken by the Vice President of the United States under the, he couldn't do it. He's not supposed to, because the Vice President can't declassify anything. So the Presidential Records Act is not called the Vice Presidential Records Act, but he went and his lawyers apparently informed the National Archives and turned the documents over. But the National Archives has asked for it to be investigated. The media has already run out there and claimed nothing to see here. President Trump has pointed out something fascinating, because, of course, this is very analogous to what took place at Mar-a-Lago, which was an entire effort to affect the 2022 election. That's what it was. It was launched with the full intent to do that and to leak everything. But this one was not intended to affect the election, because even though it was discovered on November 2nd, nothing, I repeat, nothing was mentioned until yesterday.
It was like Mar-a-Lago, and it was an attempt to influence the 2022 election, apparently.
Yes. While, President Trump pointed out, why didn't they just immediately release this information on November 2nd? Could it be the election?
Could be. I don't suppose any media outlets asked that question, did they?
They're all trying to get to the truth, and I think they still are, of course, trying really hard. And so we'll probably find out sometime in 2025. That's when they'll ask. But in the meantime, it does kind of throw a lot of the legal issues for a loop. The way they're putting it is that this turns over all the tables, legal and political, and kind of throws this into chaos. But you know what? President Trump was just at his home at Mar-a-Lago, a place guarded by Secret Service agents, and it was in a safe. It wasn't. None of this was the case at the Penn Biden Center. Anybody could have had access to this, and it turns
The papers
out
just laying on a table somewhere.
some desk drawer, and and not guarded by Secret Service agents, but guarded by really serious academics who would never take money from the Chinese Communist Party. Oh wait, they did. Okay, tens of millions of dollars. So actually, according to some media reports, it's as much as $54 million went to the University of Pennsylvania. And now they're saying, well, we don't know that money went to the Penn Biden Center, but it was because of why? Well, it turns out that the person who was heading the Penn Biden Center was none other than Anthony Blinken, the current Secretary of State. So this is once again a cover-up of something. Equal justice under the law is complete crock at this point, and you know, the media on the left is basically saying, "Oh, it's a nothing burger." That's what they said about the Hunter Biden laptop. That ain't turning out to be the case. So. But speaking of nothing burgers, back here in Oregon, Governor Kotek, that's what we have to call her now, because she was sworn in yesterday. And yeah.
Really?
So, by the way, we never got to say goodbye to Kate Brown. Goodbye. They even announced in the local.
Going back to Minnesota, I hope.
Or
wherever she's from.
She's probably going to go and hibernate until the media tries to rehabilitate her political aspirations. Because right now, even KGW mentioned that she's the lowest rated governor in the United States, or was, Kate Brown. And of course, she had the ignominy of facing 2 recalls, as we know quite a bit about. And by the way, for those of you who wanted to celebrate her departure, I'm posting right now a pretty good summary that you can find in the Oregon Catalyst, where you can celebrate Governor Brown's exit with 33 cartoons and photos from her time in office. And it really does kind of capture what an awful governor she was. She was so bad that the person who was running for governor on the Democratic ticket actually had to attack her in her ads, and somehow people just didn't even notice, and the media didn't mention that Tina Kotek was the wing girl for Kate Brown. Pretty much enabled all of this stuff. Nothing that Kate Brown accomplished through legislation or anything that she accomplished through the executive orders was accomplished without either the direct intervention or the failure to intervene by Tina Kotek when Tina Kotek was Speaker of the House for 10 years.
Yeah. Well, at least we're done with all those emergency declarations, right?
Sure, except that the first thing that Governor Kotek did is come in and declare a homelessness state of emergency, which she claimed she was the first one to come up with the idea like 3 years ago. And did no such thing. But now she's declaring a homelessness state of emergency, and her prescription for the homelessness state of emergency, because as we all know, homelessness is caused solely by the lack of housing, and it has nothing to do.
Yeah, it's lack of tax dollars. Everybody knows that if you just have more tax dollars thrown at the homeless, that there'll be fewer homeless, because everything that you throw tax dollars at, we have fewer of. And
except for nonprofit organizations to administer the tax dollars,
and everything that you tax, we have more of, because people want to pay the tax, right?
Yeah, they're excited about that. That's what brings businesses to the state, is paying homelessness taxes. They love it.
Yeah, it's a basic axiom of economic regulation that if you tax it, you have less of it. If you throw money at it, you have more of it. So really, what needs to happen is we need to tax the homeless people.
And as it turns out, actually, Tina Kotek is going to follow up her pledges to tackle Oregon's big challenges of homelessness, the housing crisis, education, behavioral health, etc., by spending gobs more money, which actually they already did on education, and they managed to bring to the lowest level of education performance in decades, and as well as compared with the rest of the nation. So that's working. And she said she's heard from the people loud and clear. The status quo is not working. So let's elect the person who is in charge of the status quo for the last 10 years.
The person who spent nearly the last decade establishing the status quo.
Exactly. And but what she said is that she's pledged to launch a statewide listening tour, which she didn't have time to do during a thing called a campaign for office, because now she's claiming that she's actually going to go around and become well acquainted with people called Republicans who don't live in the 5 counties that she cares about.
That she'll be visiting.
Yeah.
all 5 counties in Oregon.
She might be able to see some of the other counties from the county she's visiting, especially if she gets to
She's going to have some pretty good handlers for that kind of tour, because she's not going to go over well nearly anywhere except the 5 counties that make up Oregon, her Oregon.
Yes. Well, and the thing is, she's going to really have to get some wardrobe help, because if she shows up in some of these counties wearing that
backward cowboy hat,
the cowboy costume that looks like Woody from Toy Story, I think she's gonna find out what people think about that. Let's put it that way. There's going to be
Buzz, an alien.
That's right. And so in addition to that statewide tour, she says she's going to get, because the government's great at this. They're so good at this. They're going to build 36,000 new homes per year, which she claimed to be an 80% increase over the recent construction trends.
How many again?
36,000 new homes per year. And she says that's going to solve the housing crisis, because that's scaling to the need. And she said, and we should reach to the day when no one has to live in a tent, which, by the way, those tents have been provided courtesy of taxpayers in Multnomah County, to the tune of, I think, 39,000 tents. And as soon as the city of Portland goes and sweeps some of those tents away, because there's going to be a national event with media spotlight in Oregon, so they clear the streets and get rid of the tent cities. Multnomah County goes and gives them tents again right afterwards to resettle as soon as the event is over.
Right.
And exactly. And she said they're going to have $130 million investment package aimed at helping 1,200 Oregonians move off the street within a year. So what's the math?
How much?
130 million. So 130,000,000 divided by 1,200. So they're going to spend $108,333 per homeless Oregonian to get them to move off the street. Why don't they just give $108,333 to those people and say, here's what you do.
Go put a down payment on a house.
Either you go buy a house or you move out of the state. How's that sound? Boom.
Right.
We could do that in a week.
It would cost us a lot less money if we just gave every one of them $100,000 and asked them to leave. $100,000 on a bus ticket.
Yeah. That's right.
Or, well, hell, a plane ticket. Get them out right away.
Plane ticket. Yeah. And I mean, frankly, maybe we could fly them down to Mexico. We got enough going on there. We just talked about that yesterday on the show. So,
I send all my homeless people to San Diego. I convince them I convinced them that if they don't want to become homeful, which most of them do not because they like the lifestyle, that they should move to San Diego because San Diego is just a much better place to be outside.
Yeah, climate wise and everything, it's much better to if you want to do meth intense or self fentanyl. You know, San Diego much better, much better climate for that. But yeah, so now we know that's the number $108,333.
Wow.
Tina Kotek, I almost said it. I almost said Kate Brown, but Tina Kotek wants to spend even more money doing the same thing they were doing before. That's bound to work, don't you think?
Yeah, well, that $100,000 or $108,000 is just about the article I read. You probably read the same article. Is just about what it cost before you break ground on a new house in many places in Oregon, in permit fees and system development charges (SDCs). So, if she wants to make a dent in housing, then let's get rid of that stuff. Let's lower the fees. Let's get rid of the central planning department, the LCDC, whatever it's called now, the DC, whatever the hell it is. Yeah. Get rid of all that crap and just let people build houses. Hell, I'd build a house if it didn't cost a damn much before I ever, stuck up a board or put a shovel in the ground.
Yeah. No, I think that unless this is just an ingenious way to create a brand new self-licking ice cream cone for the state.
Well, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. You get all these nonprofits assembled to start passing out $130 million, and amazing how much comes back in campaign contributions.
Who knows? It could happen. I mean, nowadays you don't even have to actually declare who you are when you donate $500,000 to the Democrat Party of Oregon. You can just, you can just steal it. Yeah, you can just lie and you can just steal it from investors in a company and just give it to the state party, and it's like no problem. It's all good. We'll win the race. Yeah. We'll win the election, and then later you'll get 30 lashes with a wet noodle. But. So this is what the news was yesterday, that the state legislators are sworn in. I heard one other thing. I couldn't find any stories about it, but apparently featured at the beginning of the swearing in celebration and the governor's speech right before that, they brought in a bunch of Chinese dragons that are like, these puppet things that you can run around. They're like from shows. Yeah. And they were entertained by Chinese dragons dancing around. Maybe that's just another celebration of their homage to the Chinese Communist Party and President Xi. They got to stay in his good graces if they want to actually be able to continue enjoying all of the benefits of being in the good graces of the Chinese Communist Party and implement their policies here. Very nice. By the way, Tina Kotek, she's the first openly lesbian governor, which is going to help us enormously in solving all these problems by spending $108,333 per homeless person. They'll be able to tell every homeless person they helped that you were helped by an openly lesbian governor, because Kate Brown apparently wasn't openly lesbian. I don't know. That's a really important distinction, and it's all over the news. Super important.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just groundbreaking. The glass ceiling has been shattered once again, and I'm so proud to be an Oregonian.
So now she's declared.
I didn't vote for her, though.
No, and I think that's important for everyone to know. But here's something fascinating. So she's declared a war on homelessness, or a homelessness emergency. But she has not declared what I think might actually be a better and more useful story, which is a fentanyl emergency. Fentanyl is, we talked about it last night. The guest we had on, who's been spending time down at the border, told us about something called carfentanil, which is 50 times more dangerous, more deadly than fentanyl, which is already pretty damn deadly. And now they're bringing it across in liquid form. So they got these drug mules that are literally carrying liquid containers of stuff, which, one jug of that can kill everybody in Oregon. It's just unbelievably deadly substance. Wow. And the geniuses that are studying what's going on in the state have figured out in Central Oregon that drug overdose deaths that are soaring there in Central Oregon are largely to blame for the highly addictive and potentially lethal drug fentanyl. But Tina Kotek has not declared war on fentanyl. She is for Measure 110, which is a surrender to fentanyl. It's an official surrender, just like the Japanese on the USS Missouri at the end of World War II. That's what Measure 110 has turned out to be. And this it says that that the deaths from fentanyl are 70% higher than 2019 in that area, which if you extrapolate that across the state, that's what we're seeing everywhere, right? It's actually killing people, but they don't have time to declare an emergency about something that's actually killing people because you can't spend money on it. It doesn't do anything. You can't do a ribbon cutting when somebody doesn't do fentanyl and recovers. There's nothing to show.
Yeah. Well, they do much better, rather than trying to house homeless people. They do much better to spend that money. And I'm against the spending, but they're going to spend it nonetheless, against my wishes, probably your wishes as well. But
yeah. Oh, you froze. Oh, there, you're back.
Did I freeze? Okay.
Just a second. Oh, they're freezing you again. It's because you're being too provocative, David. The service provider is coming after you. So.
Oh, well, that's Elon Musk.
Okay, well, then it's maybe somebody else that's attacking the service. People can.
Well, what I said is everybody would be a lot better off if they spent that $130 million on treatment centers.
Yeah, which we are actually 50th out of 50 in the United States, which means that we're at the absolute bottom of providing that. But there's not going to be any time for that. They've got houses to build, and that's going to fix it.
Yeah, houses to build the drug addicts are going to die in.
Yeah, that's right. It's a nice place to die.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you're going to die, you may as well die on carpet, maybe, or
more closets to store your fentanyl. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that Deschutes County is actually considering a policy which we've heard about in other places in the state that are trying to deal with illegal encampments. They're also called unsanctioned camps, and they're driven by it's homeless people that want to do meth intense. Some of them want to do it in our state's forests. And Juniper Ridge fire in August of 2020 that scarred 39 acres in Bend's northeast side after a motorhome ignited dry grass on county land. It was 100% contained within a day, but not before frightening area residents, including a sizable homelessness encampment of more than 150 people that just happened to be there. Now they are considering banning it, which, as we know, Portland has passed an ordinance that's supposed to take effect that's supposed to end unsanctioned camping.
Really?
So, yeah.
On city streets and parks and all that?
Yeah. And so they are, the tide is turning, even in cities that are pretty deep blue at this point, that they're starting to realize that people are pissed off and they don't want this crap anymore.
So donors are including a note with their Democrat donation check, I would imagine, is what's going on.
That's probably it. And some local businesses said, yeah, I'm super woke, but this crap's got to end. Somebody like in the Pearl, like the same people who got tired of Antifa coming by and busting their windows out. And then they finally got arrested. Yeah,
I remember we covered that. Somebody called City Hall, and now something's going to happen.
Yeah, that's right. So, but that this is not going to stop Oregon from continuing to make national headlines, such as the headline, Oregon wants schools to hide gender identity from parents. This story broke last week, and there's actually some more developments on this because there was a whole set of guidance that was put out to support gender expansive students As they put it, students who are not publicly asserting their authentic gender identity may have privacy concerns about student school staff
Their authentic gender ID.
or their families finding out before they are ready to share it. So apparently this is an attempt to undermine families and parents, and it is at the direction of Colt Gill, the director of the Oregon Department of Miseducation and Failure, with the state of Oregon. So Mr. Gill has
That's criminal.
yeah, I mean but have we not become used to the idea that this is what they do in Oregon repeatedly?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're we're certainly aware of it, and apparently enough people have become used to it, but we still should not accept it.
No, oh, absolutely not. And I'm sort of being facetious about how this is such a good idea because it's terrible. And the libs of TikTok have posted an email sent to staff at a middle school in the Oregon Trail School District directing students to refer to a 7th grade female as they, them. However, the email also asked staff to continue to refer to the students using she, her pronouns when talking to their parents. So libs of TikTok, which some radical leftists have tried to dox and get people to go after them and get them banned on Twitter. They exposed this, so they've done quite a service for all of us. The Oregon Department of Education is preparing to spend $2 million on developing get this, LGBTQ2SIA plus curriculum and safer affirming spaces. So you don't have to learn your ABCs now. You just have to learn your LGBTQ2SIA pluses. And ABCs, not so important really at this point. That's been brought forward also by another startling report that this is in the Post Millennial, that Oregon is pledging to affirm sex changes for kids as reading proficiency plummets. It's the Oregon Department of Education. So they promote use of pronouns using bathrooms based on gender identity and support, quote, gender affirming cares for minors. It also provides links to kids with info on, quote, tucking and, quote, chest binding, unquote. This is our Department of Education. And this is in a state where, as we know, the reading standards are near rock bottom. A staggering 61% of third graders and 54% of seventh graders aren't fully proficient at reading, including 30% of seventh graders found to be substantially below grade level in Oregon. And yet you can see what our education, this is what you got. You elected a governor who thinks this is awesome stuff. You're already seeing the results. They're already rolling out more of this horse hockey because you voted for it. I didn't, you didn't, but Oregon did, supposedly.
And she's only been governor for 1 day, 2 days now, I guess.
I know. These are rapid results on what really matters to people, which is that our schools are as quote as woke and affirming of sex changes and hiding gender identity from parents as much as possible. That is the priority in the state.
Yeah.
Education, not so much. And by the way, at the federal level, the Brandon administration education department is proposing cutting student loan repayments in half. They say students who take out less than $12,000 would have all of their debt canceled after 10 years under a new plan. So it's sort of an auto debt cancellation that they're going to implement, which is a huge way of saying to people who worked hard, whose parents took out second jobs, who saved and paid for the educations. That's a great way to say a giant FU to those people.
It sure is.
And it's Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. He said, we cannot return to the same broken system we had before the pandemic when 1 million borrowers defaulted on their loans a year, snowballing interest. left millions owing more than they initially borrowed. We can't go back to the days when people refused to pay back their student loans and then they suffered for it. We can't have that.
Well, I don't even see why they call them loans anymore, Kevin.
Yeah, they're grants.
I mean, if you don't, I assume that you take out one of these quote loans unquote, and after 10 years, if it's forgiven, so to speak, or the the payment is transferred to the taxpayers, then it's not a loan at all. And I'm not even sure why anyone would pay a dime on it, or why the lender would charge interest, because you just know that the loan is not going to be repaid, or the grant is not going to be repaid. I mean, it sounds to me like just everybody's got $12,000 grants.
Yeah, it's just a scam. And actually, the only justification I can come up with for canceling these debts would be that the education wasn't worth the money they paid in the first place.
They should get their money back.
Which is the way the money should be gotten back, is if the education was a total crock, you go back to the supplier of the education and you say, I think we're going to take this out of your hide, or out of your what do they call those big funds that universities have? Endowments.
There you
we'll
go.
go and get it from your endowment, and then we'll call it even.
Right.
But that's not what happens, which is why you get more of the crappy education, because we actually pay more for crappy education as time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's sort of the education news that I thought everyone wanted to know. We actually caught wind of something, and I don't know if you had heard about this, David. You might still have some of your sources and tentacles into Salem and Marion County, but there was a very interesting story that came up yesterday. It was that there's an effort underway by something called Fly Salem. It's like Travel Salem, Salem Area Chamber of Commerce, the Strategic Economic Development Corporation, and the City of Salem Airport Manager. They all got together and they said, let's get commercial service going out of the Salem Airport, which means that you could fly directly to Seattle or someplace in California and not have to drive to Portland International Airport. They thought it'd be good for the economy.
It is good.
It is good, right? It would be good for the economy, for tourism, for people that are simply trying to be efficient about their time, even people that might commute to a job someplace on the West Coast, for instance, or and back. Yeah. And they were coming to a vote yesterday in the Salem City Council, but it turns out a group called 350 Salem, which is, they describe themselves as a grassroots organization taking local action for a stable climate and sustainable planet. They want to say no to commercial air service in Salem. The Salem City Council at 6 p.m. yesterday discussed the proposal, and these guys all showed up and screamed at them. They were begging people for a good turnout. I guess they didn't have a very good turnout, but they also had, they were making a bunch of these points that really were completely rebuttable. One of them was that it's bad for the climate, which is nuts, because everybody knows that if you're totally down with the CO2 thing, right, and you want to reduce it, which emits more CO2, hundreds of cars driving to the Portland International Airport, Eugene, to get on a plane there, or a plane that lands in Salem and you get on there after a 10-minute drive.
Right. Yeah. So did this group show up at the meeting on bicycles?
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe they just levitated there. Hopefully they walked there. I know that it was raining, so hopefully they got rained on. But I
don't take a single climate activist seriously unless they've committed suicide.
Yeah, that's right. To reduce their carbon footprint to
Right.
100%, right?
That's
Exactly.
that's how you get to zero emissions.
That's the zero emissions. Exactly. And by the way, they made all these points here because they basically want to scuttle. And by the way, everything they said here will apply even more to commercial air service out of places like Portland. So there's a good reason to defeat these idiots.
Yeah.
And because they said the air service doesn't pass the equity lens test and the climate lens test. I know. So just when you thought that that these guys have kind of let up and stopped being idiots, they want everything electrified, and they want plane travel banned. And so, but as it would happen, people responded. In fact, there was some very thoughtful responses that I got to see, which is that they will actually, by making people drive, of course, to those airports further away, they will cause more carbon emissions, but they are anti-civilization. Turns out the city council didn't agree with these guys, and they voted 9-0 against these idiots.
Nice.
9-0. So we like reporting good news sometimes, and I think
Yeah.
this qualifies.
Yeah, that's a win. That's a win. I mean, it's a lot more convenient to fly out of a smaller city closer to you. I mean, I fly I fly out of Medford. I fly to either Phoenix or Denver, and which are major hubs, and I can get to the rest of the country from there. And it stops me from having to drive 5 hours to Portland, or 7 hours to San Francisco.
Which, by the way, the roads are already pretty congested. And as we know, the Democrats like to make roads more congested. So why make them more congested by having more people drive to distant airports? Again, and I see Lori's mentioning about Eugene, and you can get on a plane there in Eugene. This, when you imagine the future, and that used to see like flying cars and all that kind of stuff, you at least assumed that small local airports would be a place you could go to, that you wouldn't be driving long distances in cars to get to planes, that you would in fact get on a plane and go pretty spontaneously where you want. I do have to unfortunately introduce a piece of not so great news, not shocking, but typical of the Brandon administration. The Brandon administration is going to make a move to ban gas stoves, citing clean energy policy. And they're going to piss off roughly 40% of U.S. homes who use
Anybody
natural
who
gas.
eats,
That's right.
anybody who eats in a restaurant.
Exactly. Every restaurant, they cook your food with natural gas. And so
Yeah.
if you hate restaurants and you hate cooking food with natural gas in your home, what I suggest you do is just go pay the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to change it out to all electric. If you're a restaurant, you probably won't have any customers after that. So I don't know how you'll pay for that. But
That'll put Burger King out of business.
yeah, well, and
Lane broiled, baby.
yes, and so, but what they've got is a guy named he's the Consumer Product Safety Commission agency guy named Richard Trumka. So isn't Richard Trumka Jr.? Is this sounds like is that like a mafia?
FLCIO.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a mob boss or something. And
Union boss Trumka.
he's saying products that can't be made safe can be banned. Apparently, without an act of Congress, they can just go ahead and just start deciding they're going to ban stuff. This hasn't worked at the local level where they tried to ban natural gas. Even in Eugene, as we found recently, 70% of residents of Eugene hated the idea.
Yeah.
80% of Eugene businesses hated the idea. Hundreds of people showed up at the city council and throttled those guys. And they're kind of afraid to pass the ban right now, though they say they still intend to, in order to please the AstroTurf activist that showed up from University of Oregon, who will live there for a mere couple of years before they go off and get jobs fighting for climate change with Antifa. And but what they are doing, they're so while you and I thought we were just living our lives, these people behind the scenes are trying within the bureaucracy to get around elected officials and to ban it that way.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's the executive branch run amok, isn't it?
It is, and they are not accountable to the people directly, and sometimes even indirectly. And once they do these things, then this leads to lengthy court battles, which they usually get the upper hand if they've got judges that have been appointed, because they judge shop for that, and then they get a judge that goes out and makes a ruling until one day it finally gets to a higher court where they say, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And they get rid of it. But this is what they're doing, and they want to force Americans to buy electric stoves, which are more expensive, and pay higher electric bills, which are already too high, which they plan to make higher by making the energy sources that electricity is generated with more effective and less available and reliable. So they've got a super smart plan here. We've got to fight back.
Guaranteed to fail.
With that?
Guaranteed to fail.
Exactly. But let's make sure they pay a massive political price for this. The party that wants to radically transform your lives and save you from what they have decided is now unsafe. This is a good way to wrap up tonight, because if we just made a list of all the things that the government's doing for your own protection, we wouldn't need a constitution anymore. We wouldn't need any kind of freedoms of anything, because it would all be taken care of, because we could be protected from everything, including free speech.
Mommy and daddy government.
Well, it's worse than that, isn't it? Because it's at least mommy and daddy love you. Government doesn't love you.
Well, they love your money. I mean, they love you in so much as that you can produce. If you can produce, then they love you. And actually, some people that don't produce, they kind of love you too, because they can hold you up and say to the people that do produce, "I need more money for this guy."
That's right.
Yeah.
And those people will vote for you and keep you in there so you can keep doing all this crap to the American people.
They love things about you, but they couldn't care less whether you lived or died.
That's right. And it's interesting what's going on in China right now, because if you do happen to be one of those people that dies, and the government actually probably won't let anybody know about it. The crematoriums are full, and nobody's been told why. They're not allowed to know, and they're not allowed to protest about it either. That's the future you can expect if you don't fight back, and you don't start fighting back right now. Every day.
Well, I take it that the CCP has not banned natural gas, because you can't keep the crematoriums running without them.
That's right. Yes, exactly. And I just saw something fascinating today. It was a post on LinkedIn, which
or maybe they're coal powered in China. I don't know, but
no, that's possible. But when they showed like the CO2 emissions by country or group of countries, in the case of the EU, it showed the United States and the EU, and it was going down, and then one country went from like 0 to like as much as the European Union. That's India. And then it showed China, and it was like 3 or 4 times the United States, and easily 6 times that of the European Union. And they're like, well, what we have to do is we have to save the planet by crushing fossil fuels in the United States. Okay, so that they can do it in China instead, right?
Yeah. I've told people before that are concerned about the climate. I've told the story about the lady that wanted the green air conditioner. I said the only green air conditioner is not to buy one. She said, "Well, I want one." I said, "Well, just generally speaking, just buy American. We have the tightest environmental laws in the entire world, and if you buy something here, it's probably about as green as it can be."
Yeah, that's right. No, that's exactly right. And every product you buy from China is being manufactured with all of that all those emissions that they have over there. So,
Yeah.
I think that we've opened some minds. We got to remember that anything they try in Salem, they're going to try in other cities. So let's be ready for that, because there's much dumber than the Salem City Council who may actually think this is a good idea and try to quash commercial aviation altogether. That's what's coming.
Yeah.
And so we've got to fight this. We got to fight the Brandon administration trying to ban gas stoves. And we got to get up every day and say, what is it that we can do to make sure that there's an affordable, reliable future of energy choice? And,
we can collide atoms. That's what we can do.
I think that's probably going to happen eventually. Yeah. Well, anything else? Any last words of wisdom before we wrap up here tonight, David?
Before we wrap up our first show together of the COTEC administration, hold on to your wallets, people.
Hold on to your wallets. That's exactly right. And be ready to let them know what you think of the crap they're doing. They at least you got to use your voice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me here tonight. Thanks everyone for watching. And and we will see you tomorrow night. It should be Don, and I think you and Don are on tonight. Is that right? Tomorrow night.
No, I think that's next week.
Oh, okay, maybe that's next week. Okay.
Yeah, so next week. Sonny's going to be gone next week.
So Sonny and Don are on tomorrow night with the next episode of The Captive Audience, and I'm sure more crazy stories for them to talk about. Have a good night, everyone, and keep fighting. Take care.